This afternoon it gets to about 30 degrees. Yeah.
That's hot. We are going to
Yeah.
get to 40 degrees. Okay. So anyway, Isaac, thank you very much for being part of the symposium and all the other various events that you've been part of. And of course, you are going to tell us about yourself. But before that, just a second to put up what we are doing here. Why are we sitting here and what are we discussing? So mediation legislation, the how, what, when, where, which, who, why of it. So whatever thoughts, Isaac, don't worry. It's you are creating the legislation. Take it that way.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
So Isaac from Ghana is going to tell us a little bit about himself. Then you'll give me 30 seconds to tell people where the information about the work that I'm doing. Let's go, Isaac, because this time, look, sessions are
Thank
short
you.
sessions. Yeah, short
Yes,
sessions
yes,
this time.
yes. Okay, first of all, let me say a big thank you to you for always giving me the opportunity to share my ideas in respect of mediation. So I'm really grateful for that. And Isaac Asare is an ADR practitioner. I like to call myself like that. I practice mediation and other mechanisms of ADR in Ghana here. I'm also the administrator for Ghana National Association of ADR practitioners. So that basically that is about Isaac. So anything mediation is, I'm happy to be there. Yes.
What is the new role that you said? Ghana Association of?
Ghana National Association of ADR practitioners. That is the professional body. That's the only professional body in respect of ADR in the country.
But this is a new role. What about the other old one that you were doing? That's
This one has been part of my roles since 2013 to date. So at the other role, I was the director of programs for the Institute of Polyglot Leadership Studies, which I have left that position now. So I'm now focusing on the association level and also doing something on my own. So I have some friends that we are putting something together, and very soon we are going to have the official launch. Yeah, so that's
and when are we going to do the Ghana mediation circles? Or when is
yeah,
that going to happen?
yeah, that is part of the plan. Because of that, I have some ADR practicing club that I've been meeting with them. So through that, we can have the
Let's
Ghana
do it.
mediation
Let's
circle.
do it,
Yeah,
Isaac. Let's do it. That's lots of work to
sure,
be done.
sure,
Okay.
sure.
So it's all yours. Mediation legislation. No, oh,
Okay,
one
you
second.
said
First one, no,
you needed some
yeah.
flavor.
That part of it. Look, I tell you, the issue is that I have to put it up. Not that anyone is ever going to go and see my website or the YouTube
Yeah,
channel. I don't know, but I still have to put it out. I keep telling people subscribe so that it makes life easier for me. I put out the video, you know it's up. This is coming up. It's easy for me.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
don't know. I don't people don't subscribe so much. So that's one thing. The posts get to me, Isaac. Sometimes there's so many posts that to be put out. Look, imagine there are 50 plus speakers here. All those
yeah,
posts have to go out. There's so much work. So
yeah,
this is where it is, Isaac. Of course, you know, mediatorvikram.com and of information,
yeah,
connecting.
yeah.
The guy actually exists somewhere. World
Yes, a lot
Mediation
of
Circle.
information. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think all about the various things that are coming up. What's already happened last year. This last year, of course. Okay, I won't get into it. I think we don't have that much time. But last year and what can close the events and 21, everything is here. So as I please, mediation legislation.
Okay, so am I allowed to share a screen?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is the topic for
So nice.
discussion.
So nice.
Yes,
You've used that at least.
yes.
Someone's used the flyer.
I use your flyer. Yes. So basically, we're talking about mediation legislation as you have put the questions: how, what, when, where, which, who, and why. So it all comes together when it comes to the practice of mediation and how we want to see mediation around the world and what other people are also doing differently. But when it comes to these questions, I think about it from this perspective. So in answering those questions, one thing that comes to mind first. So these are the things that comes to mind. So the first thing is about parties' autonomy. So when it comes to legislating activities concerning mediation, you think about who are the people involved, what authority do they have in respect of that particular matter. So if parties are having the autonomy to settle their particular issues in respect of using mediation as a tool to resolve that. So that control of the process by the parties, that makes mediation more lacking. So in any legislation, so if you look at even the Ghana legislation, it puts more emphasis on parties initiating the process. So it's not somebody forcing you to go through the process, but the parties themselves using the tool as when the need arises. So it's not somebody pushing them. So when it comes to the legislation, it's about parties in dispute can use the mediation. And when it comes to the acceptance to go through, it's both sides. So somebody can initiate, I can decide to accept or not to accept. You cannot force me. Although mediation can be mandatory, which we will come to that. But when it comes to the acceptability, although it can be mandatory, but you cannot force me to go through the process. You're only reminding me to respect maybe a prior agreement that I have made with the other party, maybe based on a contractual agreement between the two of them. So when it comes to parties' autonomy, it is a very key aspect when it comes to mediation legislation. And I think our law has also dealt with that. When you look at Section 63 of the Alternative Dispute Resolution Act of Ghana, it has dealt with the parties' autonomy. It does not force the parties to go into the matter. And it has even given a limit to when a party can even accept a mediation process when it comes to mediation, which are not mandatory. Somebody can walk into a mediation center, or you cannot walk into a center. The difference is that you cannot just walk into a court and say that you want your case to be tried using mediation. You have to file the case first. But there are private mediation centers that you can walk there, and they will take your case, and they also get in touch with the other party. And the law is clear that you have within 2 weeks, 14 working days. So 14 working days, if the other party declines, then it means that if you don't hear anything from the person has declined the process, and you cannot force the person to go through. And that makes mediation very special, and that legislation is good. So when it comes to the issues as well, is there any issue that you can, when it comes to legislating mediation, is there any issue that you can take and send it to mediation? You cannot take every issue to mediation. Yes, there are certain issues when it comes to Ghana, for instance. There are certain felonious cases, there are certain constitutional issues that they think that there must be a precedent to guide the future. But I still think that when it comes to those issues, although there are certain things that you need law to guide, but there are certain aspects of it that mediation can facilitate, because it's about peace building. And when you are building peace, you must take the ideas of various parties within the system. And once we are practicing democracy, if you take ideas from the people, that consensus can be built through mediation. And I think it is not, although it is not every issue that you can take through mediation, but there are certain issues that we can still work through mediation with when it comes to issues. And we come to the process itself. The process. How is the process? So is the education, when it comes to the process, is the education out there for people to understand how and what they should expect from a mediation process? When you look at, for instance, you look at a lot of movies which educates a lot of people on what happens when their matter goes to court. You see the settings, how things happen. But how many movies do we even see mediation in it? You don't see it. You don't see mediation in the movie. Although this is not mediation, but there is an aspect of even a divorce, or even when it comes to property, when somebody is dead, that sometimes they portray in movies which are different from what happened in reality. So these are some of the things that there must be a collaboration between the practitioners and certain industry players so that they can bridge that particular gap, so that if these things like mediation, when it comes to the process, what happens when you go for mediation as a disputing party, people can understand that, yes, when I have issue, when I go for mediation, there is a movie which has even shown me what can easily happen during a mediation process, or there is an education that we have prioritized, that we want to educate the public so that they understand what happens within that particular process, their role, and the role of that particular mediator or the practitioner who is helping them. Then it comes to the voluntariness of the process. Do the people even understand what voluntariness of the process means, whether they are free to participate or they are free not to participate? What can they do when it comes to the voluntariness aspect of mediation? These are some of the things that the education has to be out there. And we come to the suitability. Is my case suitable for mediation? You know, as I mentioned, movies. In movies, when anything happens, the first point of call is the police station. Sometimes it's not even the court. The first point of call is the police station. Some people go to the police station, get the person arrested, then the matter is being dragged here and there, and they take the person to court. They don't even differentiate between what is civil, what is criminal. So everything is the police station. But the people out there, do they even understand that there are some cases that you cannot even send to the police station and it's suitable for the use of mediation, and they can even walk to a mediation center or anybody within their community that they are comfortable, or they see that person, or they respect that particular person to be able to help them. And this is what mediation is about. It's not about going through a formal structure. It's a matter of feeling that this person will be able to help me, and going to the person to explain your matter to the person. This has been the system, especially when it comes to Africa, when the Africans were not introduced to the court system. When something happened, first, you go and look for an elder within the community. So the structures, the elder within before it gets to even the overlook of the place. So there were structures in place to ensure that, but we seem to have lost most of these things to the court and the police structure. So everything is either the court or the police. But these are some of the things that we must still educate the people to rethink and look back what we used to do and how we can polish it to suit what is happening to. We may not be able to do it the same way that we used to do it, but there is something that we can work within that and make it better. Then when it comes to jurisdictional issues, jurisdiction. So what are the scope of mediation? What are the things that the people can talk about? Do they even have authority to settle that particular issues and all that? So these are matters that where legislation comes in to correct. Sometimes it's not about, there's one thing that we normally say, that when two or more people agree, there is no law, because once they agree and nobody raises an issue about certain things, once it is right, there is no law. But once somebody raises an issue, that is where jurisdictional issues comes in. Now there is the Singapore Convention on Mediation. Ghana signed in July 22nd, 2020. Up to date, it has not even gone to Parliament for ratification. That is there. But the thing is, we have foreign investors doing business in Ghana. We have signed a lot of bilateral treaties with other countries, but we have signed this, we have not rectified. A lot of countries have also rectified. So when it comes to those issues, you see that a lot of businesses do use arbitration, especially when you see most of the contract that has been signed within the government and private sector. You see that a lot of them are using arbitration because they feel that there is some level of backing internationally to that. So if we're able to have that kind of backing with mediation, when everybody has been able to even subscribe to the New York, the Singapore Convention, and they are practicing, and then this will balance the international mediation aspect of it. Then we come to the practitioners. When it comes to practitioners, trained or untrained. One particular thing that I like about the law of Ghana is that it doesn't mention specifically about training. It's about individual or an institution. So the individual can be anybody. So far as the parties have agreed on the candidature of the person, then it means that that person can serve as your mediator. So whether trained or untrained, nobody can say that the outcome that you have had will not be accepted because the mediation was conducted by an untrained person. That cannot be done. But the only challenge is that maybe the untrained person may not be able to capture the outcome of the process well, which when maybe one of the parties fail to honor their part of the agreement, enforcement will become an issue. That is where maybe the difference will be. Apart from that, an untrained person or anybody can do mediation so far as the parties accept their candidature to be a mediator. Then we come to the mandatory aspect of the process, whether it should be mandatory or not. Because when you even look at recently, I think 2020, they passed a new Ghana land law, which makes it mandatory before you go to court with a land case. You have to at least try with the use of ADL, not particularly mediation, but use ADL if you are unsuccessful before you go to the court. And the court has also passed a new CI, which has also opened the system and say that when you file a case at the High Court, you have first 1 month to try a settlement if that is possible. If you are able to get a settlement, then the case will not go to the open court. These are some of the things that the court is also trying to bring in and the system so that it makes the people, the mediation or any ADR mechanism acceptable. But the people that we want to make them accept certain things, do they even understand the processes and what they are going to? You know, there are people who still feel that they must get somebody to bring finality to their issue, but forgetting that they themselves are the solution and they can bring proper finality to a particular issue than the individual that they want to trust their authority to. So all these things encourages when it comes to the mandatory aspect. When you have a contract with somebody, you cannot just run and go to the court and leave the contract where the terms of the contract is say maybe the contract stipulates for a mediation, then you cannot run away. So it becomes mandatory. All these things are good to encourage the public participation. Then the court referrals, the court also encourages, when you look at the court acts, it encourages for court referrals. If you look at the act itself, it encourages for court referrals so that cases within the courts. But what the court has done is that they have a court collected section, which is the court annex mediation in Ghana. But the only thing is that the court mediation, once you file your case there and you are referred to that place, you don't pay. But when the court refers you to an outside mediating center, then you have to pay. That has been the difficult. That's why I added free or not free, because the act is clear on mediation that when you go for mediation, it is not free. You pay a fee for that, a fee that you have agreed with the practitioner. But since the court has made it side free, although you have filed your case, so it is not entirely free. You file your case, you have paid maybe a lawyer or something, then it is not entirely free, but because of the nature and how it is done, in order to reduce the backlog of cases, it makes sometimes people more comfortable using that system than coming to a private side because they know that maybe they are going to charge. But if you want privacy and being able to work with your things, but if people understand all these things, they will be able to use a private side more. Then it comes to the outcome. Answering the question why, because when it comes to the outcome of the process, if you have done mediation and at the end of the mediation process, what do you expect the outcome to say? What should be done with the outcome? Once the two, after I mentioned earlier that once the two agree, that the outcome is something that they are happy with, the outcome is something that they are ready to comply with, then the process has ended. Everybody honor their part of the bargain, and it ends the process. But where one particular person failed to honor their part of the bargain, that is where the outcome of the mediation is very important. So and the law also recognizes that the outcome of a mediation process, it doesn't matter where you sit or where you did the mediation process, it is acceptable and it is binding. So once it is binding, then it comes to the question of enforceability. So once a mediation outcome is binding, then it can be enforced within the court system, and you can have the other side, or compelling the other side to honor their side of the bargain. So basically, when it comes to the questions that you ask as to how, when, and where, and what, and who, this is what comes into mind when it comes to me as a practitioner. This is what comes to mind, basically, Vikram.
Perfect. But tell me, Isaac, have you compared the mediation provisions in your law against the UNCITRAL model law?
Yes. I've compared the mediation provisions to the UNCITRAL model law. And if you look at our mediation provisions, it is more like a copy and paste of the UNCITRAL model law. So it's like most of the things just a lifting from that side, and we made it home for ourselves. So it's more similar.
No, is it similar or is it the same? I mean, I want to know whether you've checked whether are there any differences and what are those differences, so we can check why those changes.
The differences is about when we know the UNCITRAL law is more particular about trade and those things. So those are but this one is about general mediation in general. Yes. So, but
that is also that's also basically idea was to make it. That's also a general law. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah. So when you look at our law, it is more on generality of the mediation practice within the country. But it's well, let me say that it is the same when you look at the UNCITRAL law and the Ghana ADR Act. It's because when it comes to the process, the initiation of the process, when you have to do initiation of mediation and the processes involved and other things, it followed the same process. And
no, but in terms of the UNCITRAL, of course, the 2018 one, and yours is 2010. So what changes were made between that period? If there's anything that needs to be looked at, that sometime on 19th, maybe you can just look at that. What is UNCITRAL put out after that? What are the changes?
Yes. Definitely, there will be some few touches that we have to, particularly when it comes to the coverage of the issues that the law can deal with and the issues that the law cannot do. I think a lot of experts have spoken about even the Section 1 of the Act, which needs to be talked about. But that is something that we are still working.
Because what you have done is that fourth schedule that you put out in the Act, that fourth schedule talking about the institution and all that. Do you want to really just highlight that? What is that? Because that is something which is different from, because you put the law there, but you had this whole the schedule. So what were the mediation rules of the center that they have created?
So yes, when you look at the fourth part of the Act, what the framers seeks to do is that they create what we call a national institution, which will be like a governing body to govern the practice of ADR in the country. So it is going to govern the practice of mediation, particularly in arbitration and customary arbitration. So it is going to have a register of this practitioner from the national level to the local level, and also to have regulations in respect of training and who qualifies to be a mediator or arbitrator within the country. And that is what the other parts, when you look at the part 4, the Section 114 going talks about.
Why did they have to do that? Isaac, it was going perfect. You had a simple law. Why are they going in that direction? I mean, How do you look at that? I mean, what are your views on that?
When I look at that, I think although the law accepts everybody or anyone to have can select anybody to become a mediator or to be their mediator, but I think once it is a country, although I'm not interested in more regulation about when it comes to mediation, but I think there must be a streamline of how people must be trained, especially if because mediators are not just manufactured. There must be certain kind of guidelines when it comes to, so that people don't do what they like. So that, and when it comes to the issue of enforcement, because when you are able to do mediation, definitely there must be an outcome. So the outcome must be written. That's what the law says. So if the outcome must be written, then the people who are doing the mediation, either you get an administrator or somebody to do the right things for you and must respect what an outcome of mediation must be, so that the enforcement will not be difficult. Because once you are able to put out something, then you think about enforceability, because one party may fail. They can go through mediation and have everything done perfectly, but we should also forget that people can fail in honoring their part of the mediation agreement, so that when it comes to the enforceability, people will not find themselves wanting. But I don't think that, I think the legislation, when it comes, it will also bring modalities, because you cannot expect maybe somebody within a certain village who is doing community mediation and assisting the people there to have maybe the same training with somebody who is working with a multinational company in Accra doing mediation. So you cannot compare those two. So maybe there will be modalities. That is why it is important that when the center is established, practitioners will also make contribution as to shaping the legislations, so that we can have a perfect legislation for all, then, and make the practice better. Yeah.
So basically, the law was made nice and simple. Then the training institutes came in. They said, where are we? Where do we fit in? Let's go for some kind of a training accreditation concept. That's where we'll make the money. So it's going into that direction, which is what.
Yeah, the thing is, before even the act came, there were certain institutions doing the training already. There were some law firms, there were some private institutions doing the training already. But the thing is, you cannot just allow them, once they are doing the training, to just continue and do anything that they like. You know, people can just come in and bring any kinds of training, introduce
And what
anything.
stops them now? What stops them now? Who's going to decide what's happening in that room?
Yeah, nothing stops them. But the thing is, that is why I'm saying that when there is legislation, at least there will be some basic guideline. That at least this should be the basic guideline. But I don't think the legislation will stop them from doing certain things, because that always we should also expect that there should be introduction of new things into the system, and we must also grow, because we're looking at, we are not just living in isolation from other jurisdictions, so we can learn from others and also
tell us
improve.
where will you learn from? We don't have time, so that's why I'm rushing it. Whom will you learn from? Where is that place you will learn from? Who's been able to do this successfully?
As I mentioned during our discussion, that when it comes to the learning, one thing is about our past histories. How do we used to do things? Yes, before we were entangled. I would say it's entangled with litigation, because this is a way of life. So how do we pick from there and polish it and make it new to suit what we are looking for?
Let me tell you, I say we don't have, because you have 1 minute, Sophie's here. All I'm saying is that now you've got another colonizer, that these institutions that are coming in who are creating that class distinction between the trained and accredited and the guys on the ground. You are savages. You don't know anything. We'll tell you how to mediate.
No.
Got to happen. Yo, that's the way it's going.
That is not what I see.
Okay, I don't have time now. We have to go with Sophie. Only thing is, on the 19th, we are going to discuss all that World Mediation Circle that I'm looking at. How should the law look like, so that we can't, no one gets restricted at whoever has that mindset. Sure. Thank you very much, Isaac. Lovely speaking to you always. And on 19th, please we take it up rather.
Thank you for having me. And Sophie, all the best with your presentation.